Here we are on the back side of our 5.5 through 5.8 practice test. Notice that this is already factored for us, so all we're looking for are the zeros. So we're looking for a number that plus 7 gives me 0. And I'm going to go with a negative 7. And what number minus 19 gives me 0? And I'm going to go with positive 19. Notice that we use the fancy brackets because if you have two numbers in parentheses, it looks like a point, and this isn't a point. Number 15, we have another factored version of this. We have an x out front, so I'm looking for a number that times 6 gives me 0, and I'm going to say 0 times 6 gives me 0. And notice we have a couple of ones with coefficients in front of the x, so I'm going to set it equal to 0. Minus the 7, minus the 7. I get 2x equals negative 7. Divide by 2, divide by 2. This is where the shortcut comes from, the opposite of this over this. So I'm going to say negative 7 over 2. And I'm going to use the shortcut on this one. Opposite of negative 14 is positive 14 over that coefficient in front of x, which is 3. Number 16. We're going to do the same thing here, and I get opposite of positive 10 is negative 10 over 6. Opposite of negative 12 over 3. And if we look at this, this can be simplified. And if we can simplify, we do simplify. So I'm going to divide by 2 on top and the bottom. And 12 divided by 3 is 4. On number 17, we have to factor it first, so I'm looking for factors of 11 that add up to negative 12, negative 1, and negative 11. So I'm going to replace my middle term with negative 1x and negative 11x plus 11. Groupity, group, 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 plus sign in between. Greatest common factor of my first grouping is x, leaving me with an x minus 1. Pulling out a negative 11. I'm going to get an x 11 divided by negative 11 is negative 1 equals 0. Rewrite that as x minus 1 and x minus 11. And I get in my fancy brackets. Because it says equals 0, we're going to go one more step into 1 and positive 11. And on question 18, we're going to need to change this to the other side because we need one side to say equals 0. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides, leaving me with x squared. Notice I put the negative 2x between them because I want the equation in descending order of powers on x. So now I'm looking for factors of negative 15 that add up to negative 2. So I'm going to do negative 5 and 3. I'm going to replace my middle term. And I do it by grouping. Greatest common factor of my first group is x, leaving me with x minus 5. Pull out a 3, leaves me with an x minus 5. And then I regroup it as x minus 5 and x plus 3 equals 0. And because it says equals 0, we need to go that one step further to get it in the fancy bracket. 5 minus 5 gives me 0. Negative 3 plus 3 gives me 0. Number 19. Again, we need to get this thing to say equals 0 before we can do any factoring. So I'm going to subtract 25x from both sides, giving me x cubed minus 25x equals 0. The next thing we're going to do is factor out our greatest common factor, which gives us x squared minus 25. And then I notice that this is a difference of squares pattern, so I'm going to go binomial, binomial. And square root of the first term is x, goes in both front positions. Square root of the last gives me 5, goes in both back. One is plus, one is minus. We have the equal 0, so we're going to go to 0 because of the x out front. Negative 5 because of x minus 5. And 5 minus 5 gives me 0. And our last one is this. My greatest common factor, a 30 goes into both of these, so I'm going to pull out a 30 and an x, which leaves me with x to the fourth minus 16. This is a squared thing because we know x to the fourth is x squared. So this is a squared term minus a squared term, so we're using difference of squares on that. Binomial, binomial. Square root of my first term is x squared, goes in both front positions. Square root of 16 gives me 4, goes in both back positions. One is plus, one is minus. But before I say I'm done with this one, I notice that this thing is still a squared thing minus a squared thing. So I can factor one step further. Can I factor the sum of squares? No, that's not factorable, so we leave that one alone. This one with the minus sign, square root of the first term is x, square root of the last term is 2, one is plus, one is minus. Good luck on your test.